So in this video, I wanted to take a look at a really cool highlighter from Platinum called the Preppy. You probably know about the Preppy fountain pen, which I've looked at on this channel many, many times. And maybe you know about the Preppy marker, which we've talked about once or twice. But the Preppy is also sold as a highlighter, and that's what you see in front of you. So this it sells about $4 or $5, similar to the Preppy, $3, $4, something like that. And it takes basically all the components from the Preppy, but it switches out the actual writing part for a chisel-shaped highlighter, like a felt nib or a felt tip, as opposed to a metal nib. Past that, it's the same fundamental pen as your Preppy or your Preppy Crystal. It's basically also the same as a Pre-Fount or a Procyon, which all of these are basically the same pen with slightly different body components. But here we have the same barrel as the Preppy or the Preppy Crystal, just a plastic barrel, no hole at the end if you ever want to convert it to an eyedropper. And this does have these aren't stickers, they're sort of printed on, just like the original Preppy. The cartridge is the same proprietary cartridge that Platinum uses on all its pens, except it's filled with fluorescent ink instead of fountain pen ink. The consistency is fairly similar. It has the metal ball at the end that Platinum uses. It has the little step there, which makes it fit their proprietary design. But the cartridge in this $4 or $5 Preppy highlighter is the same as the cartridge that would go into a $400 or $500 Platinum 3776 Century, one of their higher end 18 karat gold nib pens. Here's where the pen sort of gets interesting. The grip section, this clear plastic piece, is exactly the same as on the Plaisir and the Preppy fountain pen and the other ones. The feed is basically the same, but then at the end, you have a chisel tip with a sort of made of like a hard felt type. I don't think it's actually felt anymore. I think it's actually hard plastic, but they call it a felt tip. And then the design is, again, it's basically the same. And if you were to pull this out and put in a nib, you would exactly have a Preppy fountain pen. And the cap is essentially the same as on the Preppy. Same little cap on the inside, that like blind cap or whatever they call it, and that just keeps it from drying out. Same snap-on action, so no different there. So to get this thing to work, it's pretty obvious, but in case you haven't seen one before, there's a kind of a piece of plastic that sticks up here. This gets inserted here, and it just takes some force, and then it pops on. What happens now is that this piece is going to start to saturate, and you should be able to start to see it change. Probably have to hold it this way. It'll go from that yellow, kind of white, off-white, to a yellow. As with the other Platinum pens, the cartridge has a little bit of give, so if you squeeze it, you can accelerate the process. What you don't want to do is have it come out anywhere else aside from that felt, though. A lot of fountain pens have like a breather hole or an intake, depending on the pen. And if you squeeze the cartridge too hard, some of the ink will inevitably come out of there instead of the tip. You can see here, like on the standard Preppy, this feed has to start to become saturated before it will write. But again, you could see as I applied pressure, this is starting to change as the ink starts to saturate the feed and then the channel to the felt tip and then the felt tip itself. So what we have here is it's not a fountain pen. I mean, it's not a fountain pen. It is definitely a highlighter, but it takes the fundamentals of the Preppy fountain pen and turns it into a highlighter. There are actually fountain pens that are used as highlighters, usually have a double broad nib, and they're sold with a similar fountain pen ink in a fluorescent color. And like Preppy is, not Preppy, Pelican or Pelican is known for them. So this is writing as you would expect. It's easy to tell it's going to write because the felt is fully saturated with the ink. It's not like with a fountain pen where you start off with a new one and you can't really tell. So we'll do Ballpoint Felt-Tip Gel Pen. So it's definitely a highlighter. It definitely works. You can see it's pulling up that felt tip a little bit of running in the gel. The ballpoint has no problems whatsoever. Partially this has to do with the nib and ink, or the tip and ink in this, like how much of a solvent does that ink act against this ink, but more so the factor is how water resistant, or I guess in this case ink resistant, is the ink you're using. So this isn't a perfect example of how good Platinum's highlighter ink is, but it is somewhat informative. You can see it works really well. I've had these in the past, but I want to use a fresh one for this video. It's a nice highlighter. It doesn't tend to slow down so much, and it is refillable, which is really nice. So many highlighters are not refillable. It's really a nice greenish yellow. I feel like it really pops even in this light, which is not ideal. And then snaps back on, and you're all good. You can sometimes, if you hunt down, buy more tips like this if you want to rebuild this pen. I know with the marker you can, and I believe with the highlighter you can as well. I haven't seen too many of them for sale lately, but I believe it is replaceable. That way you could fully rebuild this pen if you wanted to save some money or be a little bit more environmentally conscious. It does tend to pick up some color when you're writing. That's the case of all highlighters. You can see it's a little green there from the blue and the yellow, but if you write a little bit, you'll generally lose that color. It's more picking up the ink than it is staining the tip. And these tips tend to work fairly well. I wouldn't say they're sturdy. They do wear out fairly quickly because they need to be somewhat porous for that fountain pen ink to get through, but they're definitely like sufficiently fine. It doesn't feel like you're writing with an actual felt where after a minute it's starting to wear. It wears okay. Kind of like, not quite as strong as a true Sharpie, but in that territory. I want to do a quick comparison. This is a Sharpie liquid highlighter, which is essentially what this is. I know we call it a highlighter or a fountain pen equivalent, but it's basically just a liquid highlighter. And this one, again, similar chisel tip. This one has some miles on it, but so this line right here is the one from the Preppy, and here's the one from the Sharpie. Again, Sharpie, Preppy. To my eye, those are basically identical. So if you like a standard yellow highlighter from, say, Sharpie or the equivalent, then you will almost certainly like this. And this is cool because it's rebuildable. It is a Preppy, which again, is my favorite affordable fountain pen, probably my favorite fountain pen under $25, including the Safari and some other good ones. And it looks great. Alternatively, you could get this highlighter ink, and I believe you could just put it in your standard, Preppy or Pilot, sorry, not Pilot, Preppy or Platinum fountain pen. I haven't done that yet, but now that I think of it, it's something I should do. And then, again, no difference, good highlighter. This one, we'll see how it holds up. Doesn't touch the ballpoint. Definitely marks up the felt tip a little bit, and a little bit pickup from the gel. So basically the same. I haven't really gotten to the size or anything like that yet because it's a standard Preppy. I've talked about this pen many, many times. It's a nicely sized pen. I find it to be very comfortable to use. Just a good mid-sized pen, not too big, not too small. And I think just from aesthetics, I think the Preppy is the best looking of the affordable sub $10 fountain pens. I hesitate to call it a disposable fountain pen, which is definitely not. It's much better than a disposable fountain pen, but it's in the price range of a disposable fountain pen. Anyway, so that is the Platinum Preppy highlighter. Definitely highly recommended and a lot of fun to have. Thanks for watching.